I got to the point where I turned it inward because I couldn't punch something, I couldn't punch any particular person. So I turned the confusion and the trauma and the hatred of my life inward to myself. Please don't be scared to reach out and ask for help because help is how we first take our first steps into realizing that we want to change our life. And if I can say one final thing, it would be don't be a coward to your own life.
The power you seek lies within you, as we are each infinite beings living a human experience. The truth of who and what we are has been hidden from us until now. Awaken, my friends, to this new reality that we are in fact creating everything through the power and the gift of our wonderful imagination. Join me as I unlock the secrets of our past and reveal the truth that has been clouded in this veil we call life. What reality will you choose to create today? The choice is yours. Welcome, my friends, to my reality practice. All right, welcome everybody. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Joey Kramer, and you're watching My Reality Practice podcast. Today on the show, we've got an awesome guest. Her name is Callie. She is 34 years old, and she lives in Southwest Colorado with her family, parents, and 3 horses. Callie is an incomplete quadriplegic with cerebral palsy. So she's unable to move or walk at all on her own. But despite her challenges, she strived to excel in numerous areas of life. And most importantly, she's just dedicated herself to being a shining light in the lives of all she touches and all she comes in contact with. So without further delay, I want to introduce everybody to Callie Goode, and we're going to take it from there. Welcome, Callie. Thanks for coming on the show.
Hi, Joey. It's such a pleasure to be on the show. I'm grateful for the opportunity.
I'm happy to have you here. We've had, hold on real quick. We've spoken a little bit last week on everything. And, I wanted to bring you on the show because I thought your journey, your story is just so inspirational. I didn't know in talking with you, just messaging and back and forth that, you had cerebral palsy or quadriplegic or anything. So just finding that out was like, oh my gosh, this is you're doing amazing things. And I think that's really, what I like my podcast, what I try to focus on here is, our reality is only what we imagine it to be. And if we live that life of woe is me, and so when we're angry at the way things have happened, they can snowball and they can create more of the reality we don't want. Whereas it sounds like you've done so much work, you've just gone deep, into who you are, what your mission is, why you're here even. And it's just, you're creating a future that nobody could have dreamed of but yourself. So I'd love to hear it. I know the audience, the listeners would love to hear kind of where you come from and what your journey has been. So why don't you take it away and just kind of tell us, start from the beginning, kind of where are you at, and wow, what's brought you to this point?
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start, Joey. Well, I guess my story originally began when I was little. My mom, in an effort to ignite my own nervous system to heal my body, she took me to a wide variety of holistic practitioners and spiritual facilitators to try to help my body heal itself naturally. And so through that experience, I started having, like a spiritual awakening, if you will. So when I was like 4 or 5 years old, I started feeling my third eye. And I remember specifically my mom saying, well, that's God talking to you, honey. And she was always like encouraging me to develop that part of myself, even though I was really young. And of course, when we're all young, we don't take those things seriously enough because we don't know how profound it can actually affect our lives. So then fast forward to about when I was 19 years old, I just hit a wall. I was like, why am I here? What does God have for me? Like, I'm stuck in this house, trapped in this body. Like, seriously, like, give me a break, right?
I honestly, I want to pause right there because I think that's something that, isn't unique to you, specifically that, you've got cerebral palsy, you've got quadriplegic issues, it's, I think everybody at that 13, 14 years old, they start to kind of, when they suffer from ailments, they suffer from issues like this. I know for myself, it was, sexual abuse, and I've got Tourette syndrome. So that's really when it started to kick in for me, was early teenage adolescence, and my tics and, all of that really started kicking into high gear on me. But I think a lot of people in your position at that age turn from it, regardless of how spiritual you were, start to question the why behind it and start to get really angry. I can only imagine, they're pissed off, like, why did this happen? What in the world, what kind of role am I supposed to play? What is this divine plan? And you did this to me. So I've questioned God many times in my life. So I can only imagine in your situation, that anger, that pissed offness, kind of, why have you forsaken me, almost? Is that kind of what happened?
Yeah. Actually, I got to the point where I turned it inward because I couldn't punch something. I couldn't punch any particular person. So I turned the confusion and the trauma and the hatred of my life inward to myself. And I basically told myself I hated myself every day. Like, I was ugly, stupid, like every word that you could possibly come up with in the dictionary, I told myself I was. And then once I realized that I had dug such an emotional hole for myself, like, then what would I what was I going to do from then? Like, I wasn't going to take action against my own life. I just wanted God to take me home.
And it's powerful how much our words shape our reality. And for those listening, it's what you were saying to yourself. You were only building repetitively. You're building a house, and with the negative words and the negative thoughts, you're laying one brick after another of just the negative self-hatred, to where before you knew it, you built a 10-foot tall wall, and it's like, shit, now how do I get over it? It sounds like.
Exactly. No, that's exactly how it was. And then, of course, and then I felt some level of shame because I had these feelings around my situation. And I have wonderful parents who have done everything in their power to make my life as normal and as rich as possible. And like, I felt some level of shame because I was like, if I feel this way, like, how is it going to make them feel? Like, I didn't want to make them feel guilty or sad or mad or like shameful for themselves that they did something wrong. It wasn't one person's fault. It was just how it was. And so in that's why I couldn't tell them. So I actually ended up telling my best friend, who is in a similar physical situation, although he can more normally move about his life than I could. And he was totally like shocked. He's like, oh my God, I didn't even know you felt this way. Because on the outside, I had gotten so used to like putting this facade on and going about the world like it was nothing was wrong, and stuffing all of my emotions so deep that I did not even know how to breathe at the end of that stretch of time. So
It's like the faces we wear, the mask,
yeah,
no pun intended with this day and age we're living in, but literally the masks we wear,
right.
to hide our feelings from the world. I mean, I've done that. I've done that for my entire life almost, was, hurting inside, but I was always the bubbly, you know, optimistic, go get the world, conquer the world. But on the inside, for many years, I was just crumbling and nobody knew that, similar to
Exactly.
that, similar to your story.
Yeah, no, and since that, and we'll get into it a little bit later, but since my own recovery journey, as I like to call it, I can see these similar wounds in so many people. And once you go through it yourself and come out on the other side, you do understand that it's conquerable, but you also understand how much pain that person is inflicting on themselves by suffering in silence. I think
Hmm.
the whole concept of suffering in silence has become something that people associate with like suicide, but there's all kind of other components to that before it gets to that level. And
Hmm.
so that's what I've come to understand by helping other people. But we can
Right.
talk about that piece
Yeah,
later
yeah. Let's go
a
down.
bit
We'll go
later.
down that a little bit later, in terms of what you're doing now and how you're inspiring people around the world. It sounds, just in what you've shared already, it sounds like literally you went through that healing process. You were angry at first, then you were shameful and guilty, and the steps in that healing process that they talk about until finally we come to that acceptance. And there's a lot in between there,
Oh,
but
of
it's
course.
so hard for the majority of people. I really think that's where a lot of my focus and my energy will go as we move forward on our journeys, is similar with you, and the fact that I was hiding for so many years, afraid. Society's made it to where it's like wrong to talk about feeling anything, but if you're not happy, shut up. We don't want to hear it. If you're hurting inside, shut up, we don't want to hear it. They just want us to bury it deep down, and it forces so many to an unfortunate and early end. I was fortunate. The first time I tried to commit suicide, I think a month before my 21st birthday. And it was, I woke up in the intensive care unit the next day with the doctor saying I was within minutes of death if I hadn't come in when I did. Obviously, there was a higher purpose and plan for me, but it's the feelings you're having, I can relate 100% with. I just took it to the extreme because I didn't think I had anywhere to go or anyone to turn to. And I thought, well, it'd just be easier this way on everybody. I'm a burden on everybody.
Right. And that's something I've struggled with as well, actually, because obviously whether I like it or not, my care, my situation do take a lot more attention and time from my family. So there's been numerous times where I'm like, I'm a burden, and my mom's like, no, you're not. Like, we do this out of love, and we're here to help you do whatever you need. But I can totally relate to, because of what I went through, I can totally relate to someone who is contemplating suicide, because like I understand that level of like desperation and like lack of hope and lack of direction. So I
Yeah.
totally get it. This whole healing journey has totally revolutionized my perspective on so many other people's struggles and traumas and situations, whatever that looks like.
So what did that healing journey look like? Let's fast forward, because you were at a dark place in your early teenage years. You felt like a burden on people around you. You didn't understand why this was happening to you. What kind of sparked that change? What kind of sparked the awakening for you, where you started now on this path of healing and discovery?
Well, actually, it got a little bit darker before it got lighter.
Okay,
So,
let's hear. Yeah, you
so
hadn't hit rock bottom yet, huh?
yeah.
That
So
was just being angry and mad at yourself. That's a
yeah,
normal Thursday, right?
yeah. So in 2011, my dad got into a horse accident up in the mountains of Colorado, and he was thrown from the horse, and he sustained a traumatic brain injury, severe bruising, and broken ribs, and was flight for life to a level 1 trauma center 4 hours away. Well, due to my situation, my parents were and still are my only sole caregivers to this very moment. And so during that time, of course, it was like my world was literally spinning out of control. Like I felt like I was literally in the eye of a tornado. And so like I remember a neighbor, like after the accident happened, I didn't know what was going on because they went out and went a horse. My parents went horseback riding away from our cabin, and this neighbor that I had never met before ever came to my door, and she's like, "Oh, honey, your dad's had an accident." And all I could do was go back and forth in my wheelchair and be like, "Where are they? Like, what's going on?" Like, I couldn't see anything, but like I heard this helicopter going over the cabin. It sounded like something out of a war zone. Like it literally had that eerie, like very real feeling. And so my mom gets back to the cabin and she's like, "Honey, your dad's really bad hurt. We don't know what's wrong. They're fighting for life in him to Grand Junction, which is a town like 4 hours away from me." And of course, my whole world was like spinning. She's like, what do you want me to do?" And I said, "I want to be with my best friend and my grandma." That was like the only two stable people I had, except my best friend was like 8 hours away from me. So like all I could do was be on the phone or online with him. And so during that time, my mom actually drove herself to the hospital in the middle of the night. And um, the next few like week or so, it was pretty challenging because he was in ICU. He was obviously sedated. Well, like a few days later, my grandma decided that she couldn't care for me all on her own because she was in her 80s. So we had to call in family from states away to come help. And that, like, I think 5 days post accident was the first time I saw my dad. And of course, he was like on machines, and it was like the most scary situation
Yeah,
ever.
that
And
must have, like, I'm just listening to you say it, and I can still feel, I can hear this, the terror, the fear that you had. It still
right,
comes across in you telling
yeah,
that story. And then I can imagine you there, it's not like they're your only two caregivers. And,
right.
I don't imagine you had a whole lot of people to talk to about it. So it was probably, I can imagine you were just kind of there alone and
Right.
not knowing anything of what's going on. That must have just
Well,
been terrifying.
and I was numb inside because even though I mean, besides my grandma, my other family members, like I didn't grow up with them, I didn't know them, so they were basically like strangers in my house. So I
Mhm.
would literally sit in front of this computer completely numb. Like I was just like every breath, it was hard to breathe. And I remember spending hours on the phone with my mom because like that's the only comfort I had. And so fast forward 5 days post accident, I finally get to see my parents. Of course, my dad's, in all these machines and like sedated and whatever. And like it was so hard to sit there, Joey, and see my dad in that condition and say, "Oh my God, like he needs to walk. Like he needs to get out of this situation because we have a life to live. We have a business to run. We have animals to take care of, like all this stuff."
Right.
And so uh about that day, that particular day, I'll never forget it because I held in all of my emotions like the entire day. And then like when me and my mom and my grandma went out to the parking lot with my cousins, like as soon as I hit the sliding doors of the hospital, I busted out in tears. Like I had enough, and I couldn't stop crying all the way to the car. And my grandma was like, we need to get her in the car. We need to get her some food, and we need to get her on the phone to her best friend. And he is the only person that could make me like calm down. And so fast forward through all of that, he spent about after he got out of the like critical side of the neuro unit, he spent about 3 weeks in and on a rehab floor learning how to like function and get his body back working. But even in that, it was scary because I don't know whether you've ever been around someone with a traumatic brain injury, but it's a very eerie, weird experience. It's like they're there, but they're not there. And he would look at me and he
I've
knew
had a lot of friends like that over the years,
yeah,
but that wasn't from brain injury.
right, yeah. And he would look at me and he knew who I was, but he just look at me very odd. So fast forward about 3 weeks, my dad finally got to come home, and even after he was home, he was very strange. Like he demanded everyone go to bed at 7 o'clock at night because he thought we kept him up all night, and like all this weird stuff. So after all of this um oddity in my life went away to some degree, I sat down with my parents and I said, look, I said, I'm not happy. Like, we need to fix something about this situation. We need to do something. I need to move. I need, like, I can't be here relying on you guys being my only source of care and stability and whatever. And of course, up until this point, I had went to school. Like I had no idea what I was going to do with myself. And I remember so the plan originally was to move in with my best friend. And he's like, please come live with me. You know, we'll figure all this out together. And so like just making that first phone call to a disability center was the most horrifying thing, because like I realized I didn't know how to talk on the phone. Like I had no phone skills. I had no skills how to, everything was overwhelming. So instead of like knowing what to do, I would get so overwhelmed that I would like freeze. Literally, my whole body would freeze. And of course, at that time, I had a counselor. I had a counselor that I was working with. This is all also tied up with a spiritual awakening, which I didn't understand at the moment, but God was using all of this horrific stuff to wake me up to like, okay, get yourself together.
Right.
And so I was actually working with my counselor at that time. We had already been working on a separate issue at that point, but she was like, okay, Callie, we have to figure this out together. So we started talking about who I was, what boundaries I wanted in my life, wounds around money. I had to go all the way down deep from when I was a kid. And it took me about, I mean, it was a massive process. And I had abandonment wounding because I always felt abandoned, even though I wasn't really, but being, you know, in my physical situation, I always felt like something was going to happen to where I was going to be abandoned, even though no one really ever did that.
Yeah. No, that would make a lot of sense. I mean,
Yeah,
if you're quote unquote helpless to an
right,
extent,
right,
you're depending on everybody for everything,
right.
that would, I think that would weigh constantly on your mind. And I
Right.
mean, anybody in your situation, I think, would feel that way.
Yeah. So I had to go through massive understandings about abandonment, about wounding, about trauma. I mean, like I peel back one layer and then another 5 layers would show up. So this
That's
was,
how it works, though, right?
yeah, exactly.
That's why people don't dive into it. Usually they tiptoe around it.
Right.
They put their toe in the water, but no, it's one layer leads to 5, which leads to 10. And before you know it, you're in a world of shit. It's like, oh
Yeah.
my God, I didn't mean to open those doors.
Yeah. No. Well, I actually wanted the doors to be open. Like as soon as I got past the overwhelming traumatic situation part, it felt freeing to me on some level. And the more I started to love myself, the more I started to find air in my lungs, and then I could go on for another 3 weeks, and then I would have another session, and it was like this whole big process that I had to go through. But it took me about 10 years to go. I mean, very recently have I just pulled away from my counseling and decided to ignite my own, figure out what my own intuitive gifts are all about.
Right. So that's where you're at the point now where you've realized that the healing that needs to be done is totally all about inside. It's all inside of you.
Right.
Nobody else can bring anything to you tool wise, or knowledge. It literally, you've equipped yourself with everything you need. Now
Right.
I've got to fix myself from the inside out.
Right, exactly. And I have to take what I've already learned and apply it every day. That's why I tell myself and I tell other people, I say, you have to choose recovery every day. And I know recovery is something we typically hear with, addiction and drug use, but literally recovery, you have to choose recovery every day. So now I get up and I choose another recovery layer. Like, once I got past all of the major trauma, then it became like, who am I? Like, what do I want to do with my life? All of these things. And then it become, well, if am I good enough for success? Like, okay, well, what are you gonna go and do to go and find success? And so I had to uncover multiple layers and multiple times on multiple subjects. I mean, even things like having a bank account and figuring out how to like manage my bank account role,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
I
All
mean,
the responsibilities that were done
right,
for you all your
right,
life, now you had to learn it all. But let me give you, I'll take a little pressure off of you.
okay,
None of us are taught that. Very few of us. They don't teach us the important things in school, how to manage
right,
your finances and all of,
right,
just minimum, the everyday tasks. You're not
yeah,
alone. We all are, most of us are in that boat. So,
yeah, no,
don't be hard on yourself that you missed out on something. A
yeah.
lot of us miss out on a lot of the important stuff we need to learn.
Well, that's what I've discovered in connecting with other people. It's just like I'm still in the process of building my credit for the last 2 years, and I've met people who are like, well, my parents had some kind of wounds around money, and I didn't realize how important credit was. And so I had to learn all of these like boundaries. I had to like vision my parents' marriage from the inside out and say, oh my God, like there's so much wounding there. And it's weird. When I went through this process, I was like, oh great. If I figured it out, then my parents will figure it out. Well, actually, it doesn't work like that. Like you have
Yeah.
to choose to figure it out.
It's,
So
I like what you said there. I mean, just the whole summary of it, you really are talking about a lot of the principles of how we create our reality, and the
right,
fact that you dove into the areas we first have to heal from. We have to discover all those traumas. We have to discover all those beliefs that we've created in our minds of who we think we are and why we think it happened. One, we got to go back and heal all of that stuff. But at the same time, you were also creating brand new experiences that you'd never had before. So you were having to imagine them into reality. You were having, like you said, but you couldn't imagine into reality something for your parents necessarily,
Right.
because that's separate than you. But it's all of, it's principles of it, imagining into existence. And then you did the most important thing, or kind of 50-50, you took action, which I like. It's a lot of people think that just this whole reality creation is just about, oh, if I meditate and I think about it, poof, it's going to happen. No, that's half of it.
Right.
But then the other half is you actually literally have to take action towards it. So it sounds like you were doing all the practicing all the principles, not even knowing what you were doing. It was just, it was intuitive. It felt right.
Yeah, no. Well, I had a lot of help, but as I began to get stronger, then I began to really vision my life, and I think that's even gotten stronger just in the last like 6 months. I have a goal, a path. I have several goals and several paths that I'm going down uh, all at one time. And
Yeah.
I think that's what's powerful about it is that, you know, like my best friend, my one of my other best friends who I met because of this journey, she was talking to me about, well, I just feel really overwhelmed if I think about the future. I said, honey, yeah, I get it, because I was there at one time. Like it used to cripple me and scare me, because I think my counselor said it the best. It's like having different sections of plates of food when you've only taken one or two bites of food in your life. And so just by having such a wide variety, all of a sudden it's so overwhelming. It's like,
Right,
okay,
right. And
what do I choose? Because I've never had options or variety before.
I think
So
that's definitely something I think society in general struggles with, is we get overwhelmed by the options, by the, what's coming next. And it just goes back to that saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You can't eat the elephant all in one bite, but you can eat it if you just do one bite at a time, and over time it'll happen. So I think a lot of people put way too much pressure on the timeline that our reality that is supposed to come into, you know, uh, balance with what our thoughts are and what we want it to be. And then when it doesn't happen, when it doesn't manifest in the time we expect it to, then in
right,
come those negative thoughts again. In come the
right,
constant, well, you didn't really think it would happen anyways, did you? Well, what are you, stupid? I mean, all the voices that come in. So it's that
yeah,
constant battle of everything will happen in the time it's supposed to happen, as long as you keep practicing and taking those small bites. But if you get overwhelmed with it, yeah, it you just go back to the starting line again, and have to,
yeah.
you just keep repeating that cycle until you start to realize small bites, just slow and steady progress every day.
Right, exactly. No, and that's a big deal, because like I said at the beginning, there were so many areas of my life that had gone unaddressed. That I was like, oh my God, what do I do? I'm so stressed out and so overwhelmed. And so like that's that's another thing I've learned in helping people, is like everything that someone comes to me with, whether no matter their story, like their root wound is all the same. And so there's always an answer for that root wound. And so that's why like I've developed this massive passion in the last, like especially in the last 6 months, for coaching, because even 5 years ago, if you told me I wanted to be a coach, I would have called you crazy. Like it's something you have to evolve through the layers in your own time. And of course, we're also waiting on divine timing, because we're aspects of source. So
Mhm.
we have to, we have to plug all these different things in together and know that there are timing. and there's work on it, but there's also divine source timing, which is a totally different map that we don't have remembrance of.
Right. Something you said there, I really liked it. I think it's reigns true more times than not, is for so many of us coaches and people that want to help people, whether you don't have to be a coach, but just to want to help people, it's once we go through that journey, once we experience and heal from the pain, and we realize how it's done, it becomes our calling. It's not something we thought 5 years ago, 2 years ago, oh yeah, that's what I want to do. It's once you experience, it's like, how can I share this with the world? I know there's other people out there just like me. How can I help them? And I think you've really hit on a niche, for you and your specific background, that has an ability to really help a whole section of our society that feels left behind, probably, or that feels unheard. And I
Yeah,
think, and you said it best right there, a minute ago, there's only a handful of actual traumatic issues that we're all dealing with, be it abandonment or fear of loss or fear of, where's that anxiety stemming from, or that sadness. There's only a handful of things it actually could be. It's pinpointing what it is and tackling it. Sounds like you're equipped to handle a lot of those issues.
well, and I think that's why in my pursuit to become a coach, I want to focus my efforts on the most traumatic issues of society: addiction, suicide, trauma, sexual trauma, like all of the big hairy monsters that a lot of people are not willing and able to tackle. I want to tackle those areas because through my experience and actually throughout my life, like I've always attracted to the people who have the most horrific stories for some reason. Like my heart, that's my soul tribe. And my best friend has this saying of like, yeah, when I tell him I have a I have a new best friend, he's like, so what's wrong with them? And
What trauma has he gone through? I got to hear
not
this.
not in a negative or bad way, but he just knows me well enough to know, like, I will literally dig that person out of that ditch, pull the like needle out of their arm and be like, okay, you're coming home with me. We're gonna like
You're
clean up.
finding the stray dog on the side of the road,
Right,
and
exactly.
that's something I think all empaths, we all
Yeah,
share that, we're attracted to. You said soul family, maybe it's soul family, maybe it's just we can see the true aura, we can feel what a person really is and not what they appear to be. And it's
yeah,
usually that true authentic self are the ones that have been hurt the most, or the ones that are dealing with the biggest demons. And perhaps being empaths, we're just able to feel it, understand it, and connect, relate to it better.
yeah.
That's why we designed this plan. It's like we want to come heal and help. So
Right,
how can we heal and help if we don't experience all that pain and suffering and bullshit?
right,
But there's plenty of coaches out there and healers and stuff that haven't,
right.
experienced trauma. But I think, there's a special breed of us out there that once we've gone through it, it's like we're just attracted. We just pull those souls to us, kind of, so
Yeah,
we can guide them, and in the process, they guide us.
right.
Everybody I work with, I learn just as much from them going through their experience than they're learning from me, I say.
Yeah, no, and that's so right. And I think um that's why it's important for people like me and you to become coaches and influencers and speakers and all of these things, because we need to show these deeply traumatized people that there is another option, that there is another voice, because I don't know whether you've had this experience, but there's been so many people in my life, throughout my life, that don't understand me, like can look at me and say, oh, she's so sweet, but like you have no idea what I've been through, like they're like completely out of touch,
Mm-hmm.
no matter how many books they read, how much university they went to or whatever, like they don't understand the road that people like you and me have walked.
Right.
And there's no amount of education that can get them to that level. So like I've actually had to distance myself from several people throughout my life, because it's like you don't understand, and that's okay, they have a purpose too.
Yep.
But at the same time, it's like I like the diamonds that were built by pressure, like a real
Right,
pressure.
right. We all start with coal, we start out as coal, and then that pressure just compounds and poof, one day we're a beautiful diamond. I love it.
Right, yeah. Um so that's become my new passion, and now I'm excited to go on that coaching journey. I'm actually building poetry books, affirmation cards, oracle cards, all of this stuff, to be able to help my future clients figure out their wounds, help them heal from them. And then when I become a coach, I want to change the world and do it in a big style. So
I got no doubt that you continue down the path you're on, you are going to find clients are going to come out of the woodworks to want to work with you.
yeah,
It's I there's something I really, just even in our first talk last week, I something that resonates with you. So I have no doubt, you just keep taking those little bites of that elephant, and before you know it, it's the same with me. You just keep going and going, and then you pick your head up, a year or two later, and look around like, how the hell did I get here? What? We
yeah.
just single-minded focus. No, I love it. What so what's the future, specifically, what are what's 2021 looking like for you?
Or you mean 2022?
Oh, it is 2021 now. Yeah. What's 2022 have on the horizon for you? Where
Well,
where are you planning to take yourself?
well, that's actually a good question. I intend on, you know, getting my foundational coaching certification this next year. That's a big deal to me, because I see the power behind that, and I'm so excited to actually dive into helping people for real. Although I'm told all the time that my existence on the planet helps people regardless. So,
Right,
um,
right.
um, but
Just resonating your frequency is doing more than, I think we discussed this last week. It was like one awakened soul harmonizing, resonating affects like 10,000 sleeping souls out there. So when there's enough of us eventually, and it's coming to a precipice, when there's finally enough of us to tip that scale, one for every 10,000, then poof, the world can change overnight in the blink of an eye.
yeah, no, and that's exactly right. As a human collective, we're going through a massive spiritual awakening. And I don't know about you, but in the last like a year and a half, my spiritual awakening has greatly accelerated, to the point where I'm like getting all these new intuitive hits, and all of this new crazy interesting stuff is happening to me. So I'm humbled and grateful that I was chosen to come into this timeline and really affect change on multiple dimensions, and that's really exciting. But as far as what else I'm looking forward to, I want to become an international speaker. So I would love to be in a situation where I can go around the world and tell my story to thousands of people. And I know that we talked about this last week, but one particular community that's been very powerful and transformational in my journey is the 10X Grant Cardone community. I mean, it has
Hmm.
taken my whole soul and just taken it on this wild journey. So my dream is to actually speak on that stage. But of course,
That's awesome. You
there,
did. I've got literally the hair standing up all over my head and my neck right now. I just had goosebumps. So it's
yeah,
going to happen. It's coming. I that was my really beginning journey as well. I think I went to Growth Con, 10X Growth Con in Miami. I guess it was 2018, I think, is when it was down there.
um,
And yeah, I walked away from that with the goal of not knowing how to do it, but I too want to be on a 10X stage, in front of 50,000 people, sharing my journey, sharing my story. So I think, it's funny how much we align with kind of where we envision ourselves wanting to go. I love it, and I don't,
yeah.
I think you have an amazing story that can definitely put you on those stages. It's just, I'm learning that route now. It's just one stage at a time, one time, perfect your story, really get it down. You've got a lot to work with, even more than I do, a lot of more than a lot of people do. So I think you've got a beautiful, inspirational story for sure go, that can take you wherever you want to go. Like, it's the only thing holding you back is fear, but it doesn't sound like you possess much of that anymore.
No, I don't possess fear. I mean, of course, we all have our moments of like, oh my goodness, what am I doing? Like, I know in 2022, the other goal I have is to be on 100 digital stages over the course of a year. So I'm really looking to launch that part of me and also launch my own 3 podcasts. So it's gonna be an exciting ride. I'm excited for everything coming up because I think honestly I'm like tea that needs to steep to get brewed. Like my story is just gonna get richer and richer, and people are gonna be more inspired. And not only do I want to inspire people, but I want to create systems for people just like me and other traumatic situations to help them climb out of their own like muck. Part of my story is that like I was a virtual assistant for many, many years, and that gave me the skills that I needed to get in front of people enough that
Mhm.
I could tell my story, and that I could affect somebody, and then someone would say, hey, like I know this girl, and so I also had to build all those skills as well simultaneously with everything else. And so I want to create systems to empower people in that way too. It's not just about getting up on stage and speaking, it's about how to take a person from their most um traumatized state all the way to, hey, you're working for me. Hey, you're building a skill. Hey, you can go and work for my marketing agency or whatever.
Right.
Like, I want to take them from the bottom to the top because I understand how transformational it was for me. And I want to do that for other people as well. And
That's
of
a
course,
amazing goal and dream to have.
yeah, no, and of course, animals are a big deal to me. So I actually want to create a holistic and allopathic rescue center for racehorses, where we bring in like um children who have been victims of trafficking, or um soldiers who have served multiple deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan, and bring them and let them understand the healing properties of horses and all of that as well. So, and I think it will be particularly healing as well for the horses, because a lot of these horses are um, thrown away after they've finished their racing careers.
Right.
So, yeah.
That's a That's a phenomenal goal in and of itself. That's
Yeah,
awesome. I think there's going to be more people, especially the children out there, that are going to need help, as we move forward over the next few years into this new transition, this new earth that we're moving into.
right.
And it's going to be voices like you, experiences like yours and like mine that can help lead the way, to help children overcome these issues, the traumas that they've had. I think something amazing you're doing, maybe touch base just a little bit on it, is your affirmation book that you're writing. And what the power of affirmations. I'm firsthand living proof of, I know what affirmations do, but maybe, I call them incantations, because I look at it more as it is a spell that we are putting on our minds, so incantations are a little different than affirmations, but they play the same role in everything. So maybe
Yeah.
touch base a little bit on the power of incantation or of affirmations for you, and how it's inspired you.
Well, actually, that's a great topic because, for a lot of my journey, especially towards the beginning, and I had to basically like rewire my brain. And at that point, I was involved in network marketing, so all of that stuff I was exposed to, and I didn't even know that personal development was a thing. And then I was like, oh my God, it was like a medicine that I didn't know existed, right? And so in that journey, I started like listening to videos all the time, and I was just absolutely mesmerized. And
Hmm.
then I kind of had to put myself in a box, my brain in a box, as I like to say, and be like, okay, okay, you're gonna keep your brain right here. You're not gonna move it. There's like there's no negative thoughts. And the more I did that, the more I literally rewired my brain to immediately pick up a different emotion or a different statement every time I started to think of something, negative. And
Right.
of course, that takes a lot more time and energy and effort than it does for you and me to sit here and talk about it.
Oh yeah.
But if people can like not really quiet their brain, but kind of like put boundaries on their brain and be like,
Hmm.
okay, this is all I'm thinking about. Like I'm thinking about walking forward. Like
Right.
obviously I've never walked forward, but like, it's the difference between walking forward and walking to either side. It's like I have to keep my brain focused on the words that I'm reading or the thoughts that I'm thinking. And eventually those negative thoughts don't matter anymore. And then you
Hmm.
start picking up on other people's negative talk. And then you start like literally feeling
I don't know anybody in my life other than my wife and a couple people I work with business wise that don't that aren't like negative all the time. It's
yeah,
once you do it, it's so easy to just listen to the way people talk. And it's like, oh my God, they're living in a hell, literally
yeah,
living in a hell that they've created with their
right,
own words.
right. Well, and actually that brings up something interesting. So not only like over the last year and a half, do I not only pick up on people's language more acutely, but I also pick up on their like chakra blocks, if you will. So like I can feel when I hear their voice, like I can feel where in my body their chakra is like
Wow,
screaming at me, right? So
that's awesome.
yeah, well, it's something um that I just recently understood that I could do and feel, but it's like very weird. Like when someone talks to me, I'm like, wait a minute, they have self-worth wounds. They have all these things, and they're not even talking about their journey, but I can feel it and hear it in their voice. And it's
That's an amazing gift right
yeah,
there. And,
yeah,
I think we're all, as the new energy is coming into the earth right now, we're all transforming in our own unique ways, and we're each
yeah,
finding our gift and our superpowers. I mean, in a
right,
sense, that
yeah,
what they've told us for eons or millennia was supernatural superpowers doesn't really exist, only in comic books. No, I think it's all bullshit. I think we
right,
each have our own, if not multiple, powers. We're just so still asleep to those powers
right,
because of the negative thoughts, because
right,
of the distractions. You remove the distractions, and you did it through affirmations. You put yourself in a box and didn't allow for those distractions and the negative energy to get in. And the
right,
next thing you know, yes, you rewrote your DNA, you rewrote your mind
right,
into an entirely new way of thinking. I did the same exact thing, you know, and it's the bad, bring it on. It comes in. I can watch the news. I don't recommend watching the news, but I can watch the news and I laugh. I feel compassion. I feel sad for what's happening,
right,
but it doesn't haunt me. It doesn't keep me up at night. It doesn't scare me because I know what it is, and it's only there to distract us in order to keep
right,
us from discovering our true powers, our true
right,
abilities that you've discovered within you, that I've discovered within me, and we're all awakening to that. So
right.
I think you've nailed it though, right there. Shut out all the distraction and on the negativity. People say, I've heard people say, "Oh well, you're just not wanting to see what exists. You're not wanting to see the terrible things. You're wanting to just live in this make-believe world, but that's not how the real world is." And it's like, no, that's exactly how the real world is. You're living in this fake make-believe box that you've trapped yourself in.
Right,
Remember talked about the brick building analogy at the beginning, how the negative thoughts you told yourself. Now I think, imagine all the people out there that are they've built a prison around them of negative thoughts, and they got a little file. It's like, okay, try and get out, and they're like, it's not doing anything. This is a concrete wall. It's like we've got to figure out and learn how to break down those walls with heavy machinery for these people, to help them wake up, see the sunlight come in, and poof, their whole lives can start to change. Anybody's life can change, and
right.
it starts with the words, the thoughts that we tell ourselves. So that's a phenomenal, insight, especially on how you've a lot of what's created and helped your journey come along. So thanks
Yeah.
for sharing that.
Oh, of course. And every day it gets stronger because every day I'm evolving and remembering who I am. That's the whole thing. Have to it's not that have to discover who we are. We have to remember who we are. And so because we all came here with gifts and abilities that we all on some level agreed to have wiped, so we had to figure out how to remember them all over again. But there are certain, structures within society that negate the ability for all of us to connect through, back to our true divine power. And it's people like you and me who are out in these communities, sharing our stories and being a reminder or a push to other people. Wow, if they can do it, so can I. And you can literally do whatever you want. And I truly believe that I I truly believe that anyone who wants to do it what I did can do it today, tomorrow, next week, next year. The thing that people get trapped in when they try is then they get distracted and then they don't commit to doing it every day or all day or whatever their ritual is, and then they lose pace, and then they give up on themselves, and then they're like, oh boy, it's hard to stand up, so I'm just gonna sit down. And it's like,
Right.
no, no, you stand up no matter how hard it is to breathe. And then you try to take a step, even though like rubber bands are holding you back. Because I remember in the first part of my journey, that's how it was. Like, it was hard for me to take a breath. It was hard for me to make a phone call. Like, I specifically remember begging my best friend, please don't make me make that phone call today. I'm exhausted. And then the next day would come, and then he would call me in the morning. Remember what you said yesterday? Well, today's a new day and it's time to make that
Right.
phone call, you know? And so that's the kind of a massive resistance that I lived under for a long time. And I'm not saying it's pretty, and I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not saying that anyone expects you to do it alone, but this is what we came here to do. And so therefore it's very powerful, important work to be done. And it's more important than um you know, all of the things, or a lot of the things that we all get distracted by doing, you know.
The material world is designed
Right,
to distract us from remembering who we
right,
truly are and what we're
yeah,
here to do. You know,
right,
I think the whole goal here is to awaken and remember that this is all just an illusion. This is all just the movie that we chose to play, you know, to star in, and we designed it this way. And I get a lot of people I see, you know, that question the whole designing this reality, you know, that we came here to do this. And they say, well, what about somebody who's lost a child, or that's, in your case, physically disabled, you know? And it's like, what would you say to them? Because it's hard to tell somebody, oh, you lost a child, you created that for this learning experience. That sounds terrible and horrible to say, but if you're at a certain stage in your awakening, you realize that we're all creating this through our imagination. Things happen, things have to be in our way. Like that rubber band you just said, you know, you pull it back, you pull it back. It's got to be
right,
so hard for some of us, because once it's ready to let go and it shoots off, you're rocketing, you know, at the speed of light. But it's that we have to have those pains, those struggles, those disabilities, you know, setbacks that
yeah.
we can't explain. What, how would you tell people, what would you tell the people moving forward that have experienced really bad shit like that, you know, death of, you know, or, you know, I was abused as a 3-year-old. It's like, I didn't choose that. No, technically you didn't, but what are you going to learn from it? I mean, I don't know. What would you say to people
Well,
like that?
you know, I think that's a very interesting topic, because there's multiple things that can be said here, because it honestly matters at what dimension that you're speaking of. Are you speaking on a 5D level, or are you speaking on more of an earthly plane level? So first I'll take it um, from a 3D perspective. So of course, all of those things are very hard and very awful to undergo and experience, but people have to realize that they've been given this pain to figure out how to like turn it into power. And I don't mean to take something that I think Tony Robbins says that, but like it's always stuck with me. Um, you know, we all have this stuff that we have to that we have to go through. But there has to be some element of your life where you're like, I'm not gonna let it beat me. So like I have so many friends who come to me and they're like, hey, this is going on, this is going on. And I'm like, so and so, you're letting it beat you. right now your circumstances are beating you. I know you're better than this. Come on, let's go. Like, and they're like, but it's overwhelming. I said, I don't care. I said, take one day at a time. I said, fill your cup. Watch. First of all, it's important, depending on the level of trauma that you're talking about. It's important what the I'm sorry. It's important what the person is feeding themselves. Not only food wise, but also, through their mind. Like, what
Mhm.
are they reading? What are they listening to? Are you listening to the regular news? Or are you listening to like Gaia, which is a powerful, powerful tool, which I
Love it. Love it. There's
and
so much on there. It's just astounding how much is available
yeah,
on Gaia. But sorry, go on.
yeah, yeah. So no, I recently just subscribed. So that's my new favorite thing. Anyway, so like it matters what you feed yourself and what you read, what you watch, who you're around. Are there toxic people in your life? Are there people that's always bringing you drama? Are there people that are too wrapped up in their own tornado? Like, love them from a distance, but from a distance, please. Like, if you truly want to heal, you have to put yourself in a bubble, and you have to figure out what you need to feed yourself daily, what you read, what you watch, what you listen to, who you're around, and you have to love yourself enough to say, okay, I'm on this healing journey. I'm not letting anything distract me. Like, no people, nothing. And sometimes that means that you either cut off toxic people or you distance yourself. You say, okay, I love you, but I know you're not good for where I am right now. So you
Right.
literally have to put yourself in a bubble and assume your own sovereignty.
Well, that
And
and that in and of itself is a whole nother test, I think, that we have to deal with, is learning how to cut out the toxic people that have been placed in our lives, good, bad, indifferent, but having the courage to cut them out when we realize they're not serving our higher purpose, our best interest. And we have to, but that fear of abandonment, that fear of
right,
not being part of the tribe,
right.
I think you're probably well equipped, based on how you grew up and everything, and especially what you went through
Right.
with your own fear of abandonment. It's like, that I think that'd be a really powerful thing to help people with, is
Well,
is overcoming that fear of
yeah.
having to push people away when they need to.
And I think that a lot of what we see in the human collective right now, we see a lot of people losing friends and losing family and losing all these things. And for a lot of partially healed people, because I'm never going to say that anyone is unhealed, because I truly don't believe that. So I'm going to say partially healed. That can be triggering to a lot of people. I have a lot of friends who call me and say, well, so and so said this to me and this doesn't resonate anymore, and they want to do this and that. And I'm like, don't let it bother you. God has bigger plans. You just reach the new level of the Tetris game. Like, come on, let's go.
Right,
And
right. There's always a next level. There's
right,
never we'll never hit the end, in this
yeah,
life or the next or eternity. There'll always be a next level.
right. And I think on a 3D level, people through this whole process, they learn that everyone is a mirror to you. And a lot of people will be like, hey, so and so said this about me. And I'm like, okay, but what did you learn about you? What do you need? What is that showing you about you? What deficiency? And I'm not going to use the word lack, because I don't think that if we were truly lacking, we would be here, especially right now. So I'm going to say deficiency. What deficiency does that show you about you? Because so many people are so hungry to look outward and blame outward, that they're not really willing to look within and say, oh my God, why did that trigger me? Like, what's going on with me? What disharmony do I possess at this moment for that to bother me?
No,
And
we haven't been taught the coping mechanisms
right,
on purpose to deal
right,
with that. We've been taught that it's easier to go out and buy new clothes or to overeat or to
right,
drink or whatever, hide
yeah,
those feelings way down deep.
right,
And that's easier. The
right,
perception of it's easier than to actually dive into the deep, dark shit that needs to be healed
right.
in order to move forward. And I know from my journey, it was scary as hell, but I was ready to jump and dive headfirst into the demons. I've been dealing with them all my life. So I'm like, all right,
Right.
I'm ready to do something. It's either going to work or it's not, but I jumped. So, you know, people are so afraid, I think, of the of the demons and what they could reveal, but it's so easy when you look back after going through it. And now it's like I wouldn't have changed it for a second, it's I'm
Uh,
so glad I'm not persuaded and distracted by the material things, the media, this and that, that's out there purposefully to do that. It's either this way or that way, and this way is so much more fulfilling. It's so much more rewarding, and it's so much easier once you actually take the leap. Wouldn't you agree?
oh no, I totally agree. And I want to point out something that I think is important that you said. We didn't say it was simple, but it's easy. There's a difference between those two words. It's not
Yeah.
simple, but it's easy. Once you figure out the storyline, and once you commit yourself to walking the path and not diverting and not like sitting down and quitting and not like numbing yourself out, all of those things. Once you commit to the path, walk the path, then it becomes easy. It's just getting over these distracting thoughts or distracting people, or like using some kind of substance to numb yourself out so you don't feel it, so you don't have to heal it, and all of those things. But yes,
Right.
I think it's so very like it's so easy. It's so very easy once you have all the pieces, but it takes a long time for you to gather those pieces. And when I'm talking to people, even now, like I have to humble myself and be like, because these are people that I very truly love with all my heart. Like I may have not met them in real life yet, but I would like I would defend them in a firefight. These
Right,
are
right.
people that I love, but I have to humble myself and be like, Callie, you weren't there 2 years ago either. So like slow down. Like
Right,
I know
right, right.
I
Um,
know you love them, but like they have to grow at their own pace. You can only do so much.
that's
And
absolutely correct. It's loving, and that's how I've discovered my healing journey, and the ability to create my reality has come through compassion, forgiveness, and love. And I have to remind myself all the time, it's easy to forget that each person has their own journey, that they're here to overcome, to succeed at. But everybody's journey is at their own pace. Mine started 2 years ago, and why isn't theirs happening yet? Or why isn't that person? My wife sent a good example. I try to push on her, like, well, this and that, and it's all in your mind. And she gets so angry at me, frustrated, because it's like I'm trying to push her growth and development, but I'm not in control of it. And it's going to happen in her time,
right.
which is she leaps and bounds, like out jumps me so often. It's crazy. It's like where it took me 4 months to get a specific idea or, fundamental, a principle down. Like I can talk to her about it, and within 2-3 days, she's like, yeah, it totally makes sense. And I'm like, really? It took me 4 months, and you just bam, you get it. She's much wiser than me when it comes to the
Well,
intuitive understanding of things, and it surprises me. on
Yeah,
a daily basis, that, how fast she evolves. And that, again, it's, we all are evolving at our own pace, and it's not our place to judge. It's only our
yeah,
place to have compassion and
right,
love them and forgive ourselves for judging them in the first place.
right. Well, I actually think there's an important point what you brought up with your wife too that I'd like to touch on a little. So, in this healing journey, like you said, there's so many things that we already know in our minds, and it's like, why doesn't this make sense? Like, why hasn't the information that I've learned, why hasn't it all clicked yet? And so, what I like to say is, um, you know, it's one thing to know something in our minds, but to anchor it throughout our chakra system is a totally different thing. So that means, like, if you know that you don't like love yourself, or you don't have a lot of confidence. I mean, it's one thing to know that in your mind and think, well, yeah, I need to have more confidence, but to actually be in front of somebody and say yes to an opportunity where 6 months ago you wouldn't have said anything at all. That's when you actually mastered it, anchoring it throughout your chakra system and actually healing that deepest core wound. So I think that's something else that people don't understand is that, it's one thing to know something, but it's also another thing to have it so deeply ingrained in this new system that you're building out for yourself that you're able to automatically respond with that new knowledge and do
Yes.
something.
It's one thing to know it, it's another thing to practice it and actually live it. A mentor, one of my first mentors, one of his top sayings was, you're going to suck the first 100 times you do anything. So it's like, don't beat yourself up over it. Nobody is perfect, nobody masters anything. Just boom, I've got it. It's just over and over and over and practice until one day you just become it. And it's like the light turns on. It's like, oh my gosh, here I am. So, well, Callie, we're getting close to the end here. I want to start to wrap up the interview. Any last words you want to say before we get to my final question that I ask every guest? Any last words you want to say to the audience here?
I just believe in everyone's recovery and redemption, and please don't be scared to reach out and ask for help, because help is how we first take our first steps into realizing that we want to change our life. And if I can say one final thing, it would be, don't be a coward to your own life, please.
I love it. Don't be a coward to your own life. That'll probably be the title for this show, this episode. I love it. How can people find you, reach out to you if they want to work with you, if they would just want to learn more about what you do? Do you have your sites, anything set up yet?
No, I don't. Just through Facebook with my name, and
Okay, I'll put a link in the description box below
okay,
to where they
and
can get a
also
hold of
my
you.
and also my Instagram is there as well.
Okay,
So,
perfect. I'll have both those links for anybody that wants to contact you. So now, since this show focuses on reality creation and the fact that we're creating our reality every second of every day, the final question I want to ask you is, if you could create any reality instantly right now at this exact second, where would you be? What would you create and why?
I would create well, there's several things, but what I really want to create is a massive coaching journey that takes me around stages all over the world. And specifically, I've found it necessary to, like, in time, I want to like move myself out of my hometown community and move myself to somewhere like Miami, Florida, where there's proximity to people there who will get me places that my little hometown cannot and would not and probably should not, because God only expects us to stay in one spot primarily for a certain portion of our life. But yeah, if I could do anything right now, I would become a coach. I would become an international speaker tomorrow, and I want to be in the proximity of greatness so I can become great.
That's fantastic. And I believe wholeheartedly that you can and you will achieve those dreams, those goals. You've got too much light to shine. So I don't see any way you're holding that light back at this point. Now it's just a matter of time. How quickly will the two align and send you down that path, but Callie, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been an absolute pleasure. I think my listeners are going to really be inspired by this and really enjoy what you bring to the table here. And I'm just happy to have you as a friend, call you a friend now. And thanks again for coming on the show. So as far as everybody that's watching, thanks so much. If you like this interview, please make sure you hit the like and share button, follow the page, send this out to anybody that it might resonate with. But yeah, subscribe to the page for more awesome interviews like this. And until next time, thanks for watching. Stay blessed. And remember to ask yourself, what reality are you choosing to create today? Bye-bye.